All right, here we go. What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 255, and my name is Steve. Who else is here on the episode today with me?
I'm Ron.
You are. Who else?
I'm also here. John is what they call me.
Oh, and you are also on this episode, right, John?
I'm here on this episode today, and John is the name that they use when they talk to me. Hello, my friend who is called Ronald, and that other guy who's, I guess, Steve.
Yeah, not your friend, but my name is Steve, though.
If I seem a little awkward, I'm off script for this episode. We did not write a detailed word-for-word script.
Oh.
People might not know this. We're never improvising. It's a scripted show.
It's line by line. Yeah, it's practiced. Yeah, it's very tight. It's very tight.
We didn't have time to write a script. So tonight, folks, we're actually kind of talking off the cuff.
Yeah, it's news to me that I'm not your friend, but I'm going to take it in stride, John.
That was an improv, Steve. I really don't know if I felt... Anyway, we'll talk about it off mic.
I'm just that other guy, you know. That's how I roll. But yeah, we're getting together this week to talk about a mix of stuff. Ultimately, we're going to have a feature review at the end of the episode, but there's a lot of news that came up over the past week since last episode that we wanted to spend some time talking about at the top of the show. And then at the end, as you know, if you've seen the description of this episode of the title, we are going to be talking about Josh Trank's new film, Capone, which came out on video-on-demand services this week and is available if you have an internet connection and want to watch this movie.
People probably aren't ready to cut ties with the internet, but the fact that this movie is available over the internet, some people might just decide they're done.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit, but...
Am I tipping my hand? I'm sorry.
I think you may be, but again, we're off book, we're off script this week, so who knows what's going to happen on this episode. But we did have a brief discussion about some news items that we definitely wanted to make sure we talked about this week, and I don't know if we had an order to them, but I think one of the bigger items that have come up that we've all talked about and has been all over the internet is just the idea that the Hamilton musical is going to be coming into Disney Plus on July 3rd, which is kind of
huge.
Wild, and over a year ahead of its planned theatrical release in the summer of 2021. What's going on? I mean, like, what do you guys think about this? It's pretty major news, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. Just so I was just talking to you guys about the DC run of Hamilton and how quickly it sold out. The tickets went on sale. They sold out in a minute for the level that I wanted. I couldn't be right up front. But anything behind basically the front row sold out in a minute. I mean, it's just a testament to the idea of like, sure, on the surface it seems like this thing is done. Like the Hamilton whole TV popularity of it is kind of done, but it still is very red hot in terms of tickets and people wanting to see it. And this going to a streaming service is huge, man. It's very, very big. So what do you think about it, John?
How long can a thing remain that thing? You know, like, what is it about Hamilton that makes it so exclusive? I mean, it has this religious experience aspect to it that people talk about of you've got to go see it. And when you go see it, people want to go see it again, you know?
Right.
What's going to be the form when this thing hits and becomes so available that it can no longer sort of have the kind of cachet you were talking about, Ronald, with selling out tickets as soon as a run is announced, as soon as a new city is announced, you know. And I honestly don't know if being on Disney Plus is going to be that thing, because it's still going to be this is going to be a filmed performance of the musical. I've heard people talk about different actors being better or worse in certain roles. I've heard people talk about, touring companies versus home companies. So there is still a lot of the live experience, I think, that people are going to look for with this property. But do you guys think this is going to eclipse the live show in people's minds and make it so that they don't feel that pull, that magical pull?
I don't think it'll eclipse the live show just in terms of experience. I think just as a term of reach, in the idea, like when you think about like a property, like you're saying, like this, the ability to reach out and like at least have the awareness on people, like have people's awareness of it and the fact that it exists. I don't know that many things really kind of come to the level that this musical has done recently. I mean, like, there's definitely in history ones that kind of are at this level, but I just think that like, I almost feel like it's probably the opposite of it kind of like winding down and like having the most exposure, because I feel like kind of like you were saying, John, people that have seen it multiple times. People that haven't seen it still want to see it. People that don't know what it is, that come across it now on their Disney Plus service that, is $5 a month or $6 a month or whatever it is, may watch this 2 hour and 40-minute musical of this live stage production and then want to go experience it in person, So I almost feel like it could go the other way, where like it could be like a refresh for some of these, because there are touring companies and there are still many cities that this musical is coming to in the next few years that will be the first time that some people will ever have the opportunity to see it. And I think it's going to almost drive demand for those tickets even more now that it's on Disney Plus and you can kind of get a taste of it before going to experience it in person. Like, and I say that because that's kind of how I am. Like I've always wanted to see this. I've heard so many amazing things about it. I've listened to the cast recording, and I've watched some of the videos that have aired on like certain PBS specials, and obviously on YouTube. But I'm really excited to watch this Disney Plus release. But that would never, I still would have the peak level of interest to when it comes to Baltimore, when there's an opportunity to see it in Baltimore, which there was to be, and hopefully will still be at some point. I will absolutely be there, seeing it when that time comes. So it's interesting because like it is like a mammoth property that is just massive. And, I think I misspoke. I think I said summer next year. I want to say it's maybe in the fall it was supposed to come out next year, but it's just wild that this recording was acquired by Disney for $75 million, which I've read in a couple articles is like the largest sum ever for like a film acquisition, for a done product, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
ultimately just to say, okay, this is going to be we're going to put this on Disney Plus because like, of the times that we're in, the options that we have for entertainment. And I mean, it really is a pretty big swing by Disney to say like, this is like Ronald, you were saying 300 million easily. Like this, who knows how much money this would make, because it was worldwide distribution that Disney has for this movie when they bought it. So like that could be the low end of the spectrum of what it could make. Yeah, I don't know. It's just wild. And obviously this is just another, bet on Disney Plus by Disney, to say like this is the future in many ways. And I kind of think it's like a really cool decision, because I think like being able to experience it like that in these times, it could be a really special experience for some people that maybe never can go to see a musical like this, or can never get a ticket. Like we say, it sells out in a minute, like they may never get to that point. So like it may drive subscribers, high, which is ultimately what Disney wants. But yeah, it's an amazing thing. And I don't know if it falls into the criteria of what we keep talking about on the podcast about like that big blockbuster film that goes to a streaming platform or to a video on demand platform. But this is like definitely in the conversation in terms of like a huge property that is foregoing a monster box office for a streaming platform, not even for premium video on demand or rental. This is streaming. So like you're getting this with your $5 or $6 a month thing, just like Netflix, like all these, the competitors do. Like it's kind of, there's no real box office in any way for this at this point. It's a part of a package.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
I'll be there first day to watch it.
Well, I mean, they've got to keep those subscribers, right? I mean, I think
do.
this is a great thing for them. And if it comes in the summer, and now Disney Plus is not just the home of The Mandalorian,
right?
But I think, okay, if you have Disney Plus, you can watch Hamilton, and in the best take home form yet. You know, I mean, theoretically, this movie is going to have some aspect to it that approaches the experience of the live show. So I would think that, as far as a thing you can go to Disney Plus to see, Hamilton is a pretty big thing to have. So as far as its value to Disney Plus, are they short circuiting this massive box office it could have for that? Every time they announce one of these at movies at home, it's going to be like, as much as we're waiting for it, we are also kind of wondering, like, well, why did they pick that one?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
What is it about this one that's so perfect? Maybe it is just that calling card, Hamilton, on Disney Plus.
I think it is.
That's as easy as saying new Star Wars show on Disney Plus. It's like people understand that.
That's absolutely. I'm all in on that idea. I think that's the only reason that's why this decision was made. Because, like I just said, this wasn't supposed to come out until October of 2021. So, you know, you can assume that theaters maybe in some form are back up and running by then, hopefully. I don't know. But it's not like it was a movie that was coming out this year in the next 4 months or whatever that got pushed back. Like, that, it's just, I think it really is a branding decision that it's pretty iconic at this point that, you know, a lot of people know what this musical is. And to say that you can access it on Disney Plus right now or on July 3rd, like, that's pretty huge move for Disney, I think. Especially, like you said, there's Mandalorian, and, you know, in the fall they'll have a second season of that. But, like, in terms of what, like, new stuff coming to these streaming properties or streaming platforms, stuff is kind of drying up a bit at this point because the production on a lot of stuff has been closed for a few months. So to kind of meter this out so that you have big things coming out every 2 to 3 months or something huge in each quarter of the fiscal year is a big decision on that part. And this is absolutely one that will drive the subscriber base up in that, you know, second, third quarter of the year. And that's just, you know, I think it's really smart, and I think it's a bold move.
I think so too, man. So we'll see how it does.
And the other thing I was going to say, like, just as a side, looking at, like, the Hamilton as a property, like, the people involved with it, you know, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, Daveed Diggs, Anthony Ramos, like, these are names that you're seeing more and more of in other things on TV and in film. So I just think also it's kind of like a bit of a synergy across, you know, Disney's got Daveed Diggs as Sebastian in the Little Mermaid remake. Obviously, Lin-Manuel has a great relationship with Disney. You know, Anthony Ramos is in the Heights, you know, musical that got pushed back to next year. So this is also just, like, good in terms of what the future looks like for these people that were involved with that original production of Hamilton and what they're doing in film and TV now. You know, like, Daveed Diggs is coming up on the Snowpiercer show that starts this week on, I don't know, TBS or TNT, one of those networks, cable networks. So, like, these are people's faces that you're going to see now in movies and TV shows that, you know, was in this musical that is this cultural phenomenon that is on Disney Plus now. So it's interesting too that these things are timed around that, and, like, you know, you'll see these faces a lot too in future Disney and, you know, other studio properties. Yeah, so I mentioned Netflix. I know, Ronald, you mentioned something, a piece of news that dropped, like, right before we were starting to record this episode, and you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, the movie Bad Trip is now. I think my brain is just kind of melting off of this news. Being picked up by Netflix, and will be coming out this year. It is a comedy with Eric Andre and Lil Rel. That's kind of like Jackass, where they set up these scenarios in the public with a through line, or it's more like the Bad Grandpa. Is it more like, it's more like that than Jackass?
Yeah, it's more like it. Yeah, it's kind of like, it's produced by the guy that did Jackass, so it does have, like, the stunts, the pranks, but there is, like, a narrative that the movie is going through of them doing this, like, road trip cross country thing. Yeah,
so that got picked up by Netflix and will be releasing whenever they announce a date, which is pretty amazing. It's one of those movies that probably got lost in the shuffle of everything going on with COVID, and it got picked up, and it will be on Netflix. And because it has so many comedy actors, so many celebrities in it, this could do really well on Netflix. It's a perfect platform for it. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting too, because, like, this is one, and I think about like King of Staten Island, which we talked about I think last time a little bit. But like this is one that you really do feel like this movie is just kind of like has gotten screwed over like bad because of what's happened. And I'm not saying that ending up on Netflix is a bad thing, because I do agree. I think because of who's in it, you know, Eric Andre, Leray, like Eric Andre, Tiffany Haddish is in it. Who else is in it? Somebody else popped I saw in the trailer that I recognized. But yeah, Lil Rel's in it. But I don't know, like just the idea of like these comedic characters that a lot of people are aware of, I think it will do great on Netflix. But I mean, like, this is a movie that was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest, you know, and then got canceled. And then, like, literally, like, middle of April, like, it leaked in some way. I think it got posted to Amazon Prime by accident. And, you know, I believe it got torrented, or it's out there in the ether somewhere. But it just seems like that's such a bad rap or a bad experience. Like, it feels like that's one that really, really got the short end of the stick, like kind of like King of Staten Island did, which once the trailer came out, you know, you realize like, oh, that looks really good. But like it just seems like a lot was lined up and there was a lot of confidence in it to debut it at South by Southwest, you know, for a movie that wasn't going to come out until like the end of October, I think initially. So it's just kind of crazy to see how, you know, some certain kinds of movies, and again, you think about what we talked about last time, a lot of them are comedies that just something happens, and you have Lovebirds sold to Netflix. You have King of Staten Island coming out on HBO Max. You have American Pickle coming out on HBO Max. You have, you know, My Spy, which is kind of like a family comedy. You know, I think that's already come out, I believe. But it's just like another one of those titles that just seems kind of one of those mid-level comedies that you just never know how they're going to do now, because there's no metric for it outside of like what information Netflix is going to release once it comes out.
It's Wild Wild West, man. It is the Wild Wild West.
And that came out in the theater.
Wow.
Unfortunately, yes.
It did.
Yeah, there was no streaming alternative back then.
It's so ironic.
It's wow.
No, Ronald, I was going to say, this is kind of like, you know, we have Quick Writs from Steve Ritter. This is like a Ronald Roundup. Because not only did you have the news about Bad Trip, you wanted to talk about Voodoo, I believe?
Walmart's Voodoo has been sold to Fandango's Fandango Now streaming service. While that doesn't sound like a big deal, it's actually a huge deal, because a couple things. Data is key. And Fandango ticket selling service that also is trying to get into the streaming market, they have that whole library of Voodoo. So think about iTunes as the most popular market for movies that are released to DVD and indie movies that are released. And then right under that is Voodoo. It is incredibly popular. And it is also a part of the Movies Anywhere system that a lot of studios are trying to get people to be a part of. The whole idea is you sign in with those services, and then it spreads them out throughout any service that is compatible that a movie studio is playing along with. So if you buy a movie on iTunes, you can also get it on Fandango and Vudu and things like that. And I think they kind of saw that system and jumped on Vudu's library. But that also means that they can get an idea of information for movies. Like maybe they could start acquiring original things. They already have ticket sales things from the ticket sales side, but they now have the movie purchasing side because Vudu is pretty popular. So I think it's a huge move. While it doesn't seem like it'll have a big impact right now, it will have a pretty big impact on the movie industry. Also, on top of that, Fandango now doesn't have any set-top applications, so you can't get it on like Apple TV right now, and a couple others. So if they get the Vudu app, you know, they have the application on many devices already, so that also expands their library and their usership. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And the last item in the Ronald Roundup is a correction. A few weeks back when we did Soundtrack Schmoundtrack 2004, where we all picked our favorite songs from soundtracks to movies released in 2004. One of Ronald's picks was the iconic theme music from the movie Saw. Ronald, correct me if I'm wrong, but the song that you mentioned was not the song that you meant, because I put Sturm by Frontline Assembly into
Yes.
the episode, not knowing the Saw films.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I guess my question to you is, what is going on, and who do you think you are? Let's correct this error. Tell us a little bit about the song that it should have been, and maybe even tell me what part of the song to play that's iconic to Saw fans, because as you know, as of yet, I'm not a Saw viewer.
The song is called Hello Zap. Hello Zep. And I think that's the one that I meant to say, by Charlie Clouser. And it's kind of it's just crescendo, is that what you call it? It's the very escalated moment. Violins are playing, it's very intense. And this song has been used a million times, but I didn't know the name of the song. I misspoke about the name of the song. And if you could pop this in, the portion that I'm talking about that is being used on every trailer and thriller show on streaming services, if we can just plop that into this episode so people can hear the actual one, that'd be great. I appreciate that. Hello Zep by Charlie Clouser.
Yeah. Sturm by Frontline Assembly is a fine song, folks. We're not trying to say anything bad about it. It sets a mood of its own. It just wasn't the thing you were talking about. So okay,
it's not that dramatic note that ends the first Saw, which is what that other one is. Like when that episode came out, like I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, here comes that song. Because even on the episode, I'm like, I know exactly what you're saying. I know the one you're talking about in my head.
Right.
And listening to it, I'm like, hold on a second, this doesn't sound right. I don't know that this is the right song. Uh-oh. Let me ask Ronald if this is what he meant.
Yeah,
oh, man.
I'm sorry about that.
So I guess the last thing we really were going to talk about news-wise was just we wanted to mention, because this gives us a little bit of a segue into talking about a movie starring Tom Hardy. But there was a movie starring Tom Hardy a few years back called Fury Road that we all liked a lot. And very recently, the New York Times Online had, I think it's by Kyle Buchanan, they published an oral history of the making of Fury Road. And I would just say to anyone who's a fan of that movie, or even just anyone who saw that movie and had sort of a curiosity in their head about how they pulled off some of the things that they did, with all those stunts being practical, how tough was it? How long did it take them? How did the actors bear up under the pressure? All this stuff comes up in this article. And I just, as someone who really, really respects and enjoys that movie, it kind of confirmed my suspicions that that the only way to get a movie that looks like that is to just beat the shit out of everybody making it.
Yeah, understatement maybe. It's been, I guess, 5 years since it came out. As a part of it's just like you've heard many stories about like the production and just like you said, some of the practical effects, or Charlize and Tom Hardy kind of having issues or clashing on set and things like you've kind of heard a lot of it. But anytime they put together like these oral history deep dives, it's just really great. Like if you're a huge fan of the anybody involved with the production or the movie itself as a whole, which like you said we all are, it's just really cool to see so many people involved and giving their input on it, and just hearing about like who actors screen tested against, which would be no one you'd ever assume. Like there's a piece in there where Zoe Kravitz is talking about having done like a chemistry test with Jeremy Renner for the role of Max, which I don't know how that would have turned out. But and I guess that was all before Tom Hardy was involved. But just like all that inside baseball stuff, I love that kind of stuff. Like the kind of things that you hear on a commentary track or a making of doc. But it's really cool to kind of be able to see so many so many parts of the machine speaking on it. Like you have people that are, production designers, cinematographers, the actors, Miller himself, just like it's all covered. And, they just did a really amazing job in just kind of trying to cover all the bases of things that would be interesting to fans of this movie that would want to know things that maybe have been talked about in the press over the years, but also some things that I'd never heard before. And I think it's one of the best movies of the last 10 years. But I mean, I just love the movie, and it's cool to see, that inside information kind of all collected and provided by the people that were involved, not just like, set reports or things like that. It's just a really great read, just for movie making in general, or of the kind of director that George Miller is in general, and just like what it took to make this kind of like action epic classic movie. You know what I mean?
It doesn't seem like he's a tyrannical director. He's just a visionary director. And he has something in his mind that he knows he can get. And he works and works and works until he gets that thing that he was trying to get. He plans for a long time. He shoots for a long time. He does post-production for a long time,
Yeah.
I don't know how much a lot of money and a lot of studio faith in this project would have made it take less time. This is one of the rare movies that I don't think you could just speed up by throwing money at it.
Right.
You could maybe give George Miller more security, and that might affect the shooting of the film a little bit. But it seems as though he has to fight to keep the lights on, kind of, and to keep the money coming in and to keep things going. And the story, it really talked about how that pressure. A lot of times the actors don't really know quite what they're doing, because he thinks it's similar to the way I've always heard anyway, that Alfred Hitchcock shot, which is that he storyboarded stuff down to the finest detail. And then he knew, hey, Ronald, this shot, I need you to open that drawer. And you're shooting that like 5 or 6 times to make sure that it's done right. And then you're moving on. A director like this is shooting just that little piece.
Right.
Actors can get kind of confused and overwhelmed by that process. And they might not remember, like, where am I in my emotional arc at this moment? When I'm falling out of the car. And having gotten into George Miller's mindset a lot recently, the very good film podcast Blank Check has been doing a series on George Miller's movies recently, and they've talked about him and his style, and that seems to be a through line for him, that kind of vision in his head of something very specific that he's trying to do. And I find that kind of director fascinating, and I do think it's one of the reasons why that's a great movie. So it's not surprising that feelings can get hurt.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing about an article like this is that you do see not just people talking about making the movie. Once you get a few years out, people are always a little more frank about the experience, but you see people even reacting to things they said when the movie was new. And so Tom Hardy is kind of reacting to some things he said when the movie had just come out. And I don't know, it is exactly what you said, Steve. It's just cool that he got as many people, like 20 people at different levels of the production. And it's not like, book length or anything, but it's a good long article that really talks about just about every phase of the movie. So
did Tom Hardy express any doubt? Any like regret of doing the movie or anything like that?
More doubts about filling the shoes of Mel Gibson, who at that time was already kind of a pariah. Who sounds like George Miller would have liked to work with him, but he was a little old by the time they were talking about making this, and then he very quickly became a hard guy to cast. But it didn't sound like anybody in the production really didn't want to work with him. It was more like he would be hard to hire and to get the studios to back. So people seem to be reluctant to call Mel Gibson a disgusting person, but. Maybe that's a theme we've noticed with these great men or whatever. But at any rate, I think that was the big thing for Tom Hardy, Ronald, was just that he felt very conscious of the shoes he was stepping into.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
But he also seemed to know that it was Charlize Theron's movie. Didn't you get that impression too, Steve? That he seemed to know that his role in this movie was to kind of step aside.
Yeah, there's a point where he, I think, even says something to that effect about like realizing that of kind of like what Charlize was undertaking in terms of stepping into Mel Gibson's shoes, and like knowing that this was going to be something that, passing the torch of sorts in this franchise to a character like Furiosa. But it's cool. That's the key. I think what John just said is that like, a few years out, these actors are able to look back and see like the shooting conditions and like, the ideas of, not really having like a shooting script, but instead having to be shown like storyboards and drawings to know like what the scene was and like what was going to happen or where your motivations were. Like, I just think that they, you get the sense that during the shoot, like it was kind of contentious and like people kind of put up walls and kind of did their own thing, and they maybe weren't the most, communal team atmosphere that it could have been. But it just seems like that may have fed to make the movie what it is. But it's also good to hear these professionals talk, years later, and give credit to where it's due, in the performances and in ways that other actors or people in the production kind of stepped up when it was needed to kind of see it through, and to make sure that, he was able to kind of see through and make the movie that he wanted to make. Cause yeah, it's just like, it's a really special movie.
Yeah, it is. I love that movie.
Yeah. It's like one of those movies, we talk about theatrical experience a lot on this podcast. And obviously we're all fans of seeing as many movies in theaters as we can. And it's a movie that like hits my list anytime I talk about like just crazy experiences in the theater in a positive way, recalling watching this in a theater with my wife and just literally like sitting forward for like half the movie, not understanding how some of it was made, like how the colors and just the practical effects, and just I was blown away by it. Like I genuinely love this movie, and it's in those experiences where like a movie really cements its place in your mind as like a special movie, to me at least. And it's definitely up there for me, like in terms of specifically talking about sitting in a theater and watching a movie for the first time and genuinely being like, how in the hell did they make that? That looks amazing. And it was an amazing film outside of just the visuals that I was so blown away by. It's just a great movie.
And, we all really love Tom Hardy for his ability to hold the screen with his beautiful lips, even as he is kind of giving control of the film over to this new character like Furiosa that really jumps off the screen. But he's the kind of actor that I would just look at him and I think I would love to see him get a chance to be in like a historical film or a biopic or something where he could really just, the movie's focused on him and we can really see him sink his teeth into an interesting character that we've heard so much about. I don't know, somebody plucked from our not too recent past, but I don't know, someone iconic like Al Capone. Wouldn't it be amazing to see him get a chance to play that kind of character, guys?
Maybe one day he will. I don't know.
Maybe. What if we threw something even more challenging at him? What if it was the last year of Capone's life when he was suffering from neurosyphilis? What if that was the challenge that made it even harder for him to portray this character? How would that turn out?
If I know Tom Hardy, I know that he's going to look at that proposal and he's going to say, do I get to shit myself 2-3 times? Maybe it's unclear in a couple scenes. And can I drool?
Every scene?
For the entire film. And can I be a not sympathetic portrayal of someone who the audience shouldn't be sympathetic with in the first place?
To begin with, right, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And can we focus, honestly, when you say the last year of his life, Ronald, I want to be clear. I don't want to see any interesting things he did that made him interesting to people. I don't want any of that. I want a film that if someone had never heard of Al Capone, they would get to the end of this film and they would know nothing about why we give a shit about Al Capone.
Yeah. What if he was also shooting his friends in a diaper with a gold-plated Tommy gun? What if that were to happen, man? That'd be fucking insane. It'd be insane if we watched that.
Listen to this guy over here, Steve. It's like he's talking about a movie that steps back and forth between dreams and reality in a really annoying way. But I got to say, the best thing you can do for a movie like this is make sure you have a director whose career is really on an upswing, who's got a firm hand and control of tone, and honestly seems like a great guy to be around. What do you think, Steve? Do you have any sarcasm to add to this?
I was just wondering if that movie ever existed, it'd be like the kind of movie where other characters introduced characters that weren't having anything to do with Al Capone, but then you found out that those characters were imaginary. Like it'd be something like that, where like Al Capone had nothing to do with introducing you to a character in a movie, but then you're led to believe at the end that those people don't exist. I mean, maybe that could be a part of that role too.
Oh my god!
I mean, could any one movie be that good, guys?
What if you had a very, very modern, trendy member of a really popular group score the movie and have no score in the movie until the end credits? What if you did that? What if you had LP from Run the Jewels score the movie and not notice the score at all until the end credits roll?
I noticed that. Oh God, man. Oh.
Could we have a really talented actress playing one of the most thankless wife parts that's ever been written? I mean, could she honestly just stand around looking worried and annoyed for the whole movie and maybe have one or two words to say every now and then? But honestly, don't give her any inner life, please.
I say anything is possible, John. I love where we're going with this. There's no barriers to what this theoretical movie could be or do or not do or fail at in every possible way.
Well, we will table that for later, but for now, let's move on to Josh Trank's film Capone, starring Tom Hardy as Al Capone in the last year of his life. I don't know. I mean, I honestly was a little surprised at what this movie is. I did not watch a trailer. I did not read anything about it.
Neither did I.
And so I kind of enjoyed the sort of boldness of the idea that it is going to be focused on the last year of Capone's life, and that it is going to be, I mean, a very deglamorized portrayal. That's a very mild word for what this movie does to Al Capone. But it's not a movie that tries to glamorize the sort of criminal life, and it doesn't commit any of those sort of common sins of the gangland film, of sort of showing this lifestyle like something that you would want or that you might covet. But I don't know that, I mean, I think, so that is maybe the boldest thing about the movie, is just how much it wallows in the filth of Capone's last days, and just how unsympathetic he is, as we alluded to, and how much Tom Hardy commits himself to that, I guess. And maybe he and the director probably teamed up a lot on that idea of presenting this non-romanticized version of a sort of a monster in his final days. But outside of that, I honestly don't know what this movie even existed to depict. Can you guys help me out a little bit? What did you take away from Capone?
Man,
I wish that I knew what they were trying to get across, besides maybe that he lived a terrible life, and at some point when you're not as successful as you were at the height of your criminality, that you start to realize how much people are leeching off of you. And I mean, I guess when you have syphilis ruining your brain, that can heighten your paranoia about that. So I don't know, maybe that, but besides that, this was a disaster, man. I love slice of life things. Slice of life biopic that just drudged along, didn't really have a beginning, middle, or end. It was the worst piece of film that I've seen in quite some time, man. And Josh Trank, I don't understand how we went from Fantastic Four, which he bombed and depleted, to come into a biopic of a man that we would love to honestly see a good portrayal of him. We've seen pieces of him in shows like Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah, that's great.
And other shows too. And to see him in this light, I'm not saying glamorize everything. I don't want that necessarily. But don't you did the polar opposite. It's almost like it feels like you shit on him to a level that almost felt like it wasn't even fair. It didn't even let the story breathe. It just felt like somebody wanted to destroy this man in an hour and a half and not really have anything redeeming about the story or the character. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to really add. I mean, it is. I think it actually is an interesting idea to kind of look at Capone in the last year of his life, where it's kind of all fallen apart, and he's been released from prison, for not being deemed a threat, and like you said, like suffering from syphilis, and I think even dementia, and just like watching it just fall apart. But if there was an actual through line there, like with the idea of some interesting flashbacks about things coming in and out of his life in the last year that remind him of things, or seeing, or even storylines like about the money that's allegedly hidden somewhere that he couldn't remember, that hasn't still been found to this day. There's so many interesting things to pursue and to really kind of explore with a character of that stature, just historically. And yeah, and it's been in movies and TV here and there, but like an original idea like this, it kind of sounds interesting, I guess, but I don't really know what this movie is trying to say or really even what the purpose of the movie is. I mean, I think my biggest concern with the movie is that so much of it plays for humor, whether it's like intentionally or, I mean, I would hope it's not intentional, but and if so, like, I just wonder why or how, like, what about any of that is really funny or comedic. But some scenes actually kind of play like that, and it just completely, misses on every level for me. And, one of the big things that really kind of bothered me, and I kind of was joking earlier when we were messing around, like, I really take issue with like logic in movies like this that is almost intentionally being edited in a way to make you feel disoriented, maybe as he was at that time in his life, with the story or with the narrative or what we're supposed to be following. But I could not. The idea of introducing characters that are not introduced by him to our audience, by Capone himself, and I don't know how much spoilers we want to talk, but I won't mention who. Not that it matters, but when characters are introduced in scenes by themselves, interacting with other people in life, and on the phone with other characters that we're assuming we've met in the movie. And then only to find out that these characters are, not real or imaginary, or at one time may have been real and are not now, or he's seeing them. I don't know. Like, it's just so confusing and it's just so illogical. And that's just like really irresponsible filmmaking. And, and I don't mean to cut down Josh Trank, like, at all. Like, I admire that, somebody's out there trying to make a movie that they want to make, and he's definitely not had a great track record, and the Fantastic Four debacle is its own thing, and coming off of what was that first movie, Chronicle, he was tied to every property out there as like the guy. Like, he was doing, he was they were trying to get him for Venom, and they were trying to get him for a Star Wars movie and video game adaptations, and he ended up doing Fantastic Four, and we all know kind of what that became. But yeah, to like go from that to this, and this is kind of like, we love this redemption story. I kind of feel bad that I feel so negatively about the movie, because I want to see somebody succeed. I don't know that I care to see him succeed at this point, because I don't know what if he really is offering much. It makes me question, like, a lot of the success of Chronicle. Maybe it didn't have as much to do with him as other people involved, the cast, the script by Max Landis, who is his own problem. But it's just a different movie. And it's kind of, watching this, I just come away feeling like I don't know what this filmmaker is trying to say or do with a movie like this, especially at this time in his career. And that kind of bums me out, because, like I say, I was like hoping that this would be like a really good watch, and like, or at least interesting movie. And I'm sure some people will make the argument, and I've read some, that it is interesting and that there's something being said that I'm missing possibly, but I don't know, man. I just think, that almost seems like some sort of defense of someone, because you want to see them succeed, or you don't want to see something fail. And I just don't think that's right either. If that's what its motivation is behind. I'm just really perplexed by this movie. And yeah, it was hard to get through, to be honest with you. It was really hard to watch.
It was, man.
It was hard to watch. It was designed to be hard to watch in a way, but it was hard to watch on top of that. Like, it was meant to be kind of a grueling experience, and it was meant to make you suffer. And I think everything we've said about the sort of things that the movie is doing intentionally, those could be the root of a really fascinating approach, if you're going to say, because I mean, as much as we've said we'd like to see more interesting scenes from Al Capone's life in the film, I also think we could live without ever seeing another movie about one of these gangland assholes. And I don't want to see the glory days of this guy necessarily. More so than just even thinking, well, this movie doesn't have anything to say. Any hint I've had of what it has to say, it feels so self-congratulatory coming from Josh Trank, who seems to be saying stuff about that the fall of a great man or a big man, he identified with the way that Capone may have felt in his final days after his fall
Right.
or whatever. And I just feel like,
Right.
I don't know, that just seems so self-aggrandizing in this strange way. And it seems to me like a really weird way to approach this character. But I think on top of that, what bugs me is he didn't even really make that movie. He just kind of throws all this unpleasantness at us. And I'm not saying it felt like the movie The Snowman, but you know how that movie didn't have
Yeah.
like 15 to 20% of its footage?
Yeah.
This movie felt like one of those that needed more something to fill it out. You're right about those characters who you're introduced to and you find out later maybe they were a hallucination, but then how did they come in and talk to other people?
Yeah.
At what point were they not a hallucination? It's just a certain amount of that sloppiness and you start to go, okay, this isn't on me. This confusion isn't the kind of thing where you'll watch it a second time and go, oh, this is genius. You know, this is the kind of thing where you talk to your friends and you sort of, it's like we're getting together to kind of build each other back up after the trauma of watching this movie. And we all would love to see Tom Hardy in an interesting, weird, late days Al Capone movie. And I'm with you, Ronald. The biopic that doesn't try to tell the whole story, that just focuses on a brief period, I think that's the best way to go. That's the best way to approach any cinematic telling of someone's story. Otherwise, you end up with Walk Hard, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what the best case scenario for this movie would have been, but it does feel like, I don't know. It's just sometimes a movie makes me think this is a weird thing that this even exists.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what good this movie is going to do anybody outside of someone who needs to ruminate once again on the idea of a toxic asshole who's dying. And I think that you can watch The Irishman for a better version of that.
Yeah. So here's my problem with it. The muddiness that you guys are talking about, the people appearing and disappearing, gives way to this like fake deep logic that a lot of people that are kind of really on the surface are gonna credit to there being this depth to the movie because it explores, you know, loyalty. You know what I'm talking about. Those people
Definitely.
that have no opinions about anything, but the gangster movie that comes out about a guy with syphilis is the deepest, heaviest movie. You gotta see it. And if you don't get it, you don't understand. There's so many twists and turns, and I can relate because I don't want to hear that shit, man. This movie was a fucking disaster.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, I think one thing that I will say, I mean, whatever you think of Josh Trank, I mean, he's like his meltdown after Fantastic Four came out is legendary. But I will say, like, he definitely seems to be in a better place as a filmmaker. Whether or not I like this movie, like, he definitely is kind of taking the hits that he's been getting for this one in stride a little more, and kind of handling it better, which I think is good for him as just a professional. And I mean, I read a lot of profiles, and there's a really great one about him up on Polygon that Matt Patches wrote a couple weeks ago, just literally about him post Fantastic Four and everything like that. So I would highly recommend, anybody interested in just reading about him or the industry and, kind of his ups and downs. I mean, because like I said before, I love a good redemption story, and maybe he's still in the middle of his, and maybe he'll find something. But I mean, I just feel like, this is not it, and this just genuinely felt like a mess, and I wasn't able to really attribute a real voice or like a real direction to where this movie was trying to go, or what it really had to say about this character. Like John said, who's really, there's nothing redeeming about Al Capone in history, in his place in history. But I mean, what could have least been accomplished is maybe attack the story from an interesting perspective, and kind of present his life in a way that maybe it hadn't been shown before, which is, an opportunity that I don't know how many movies about him will be made, especially if they continue to fail like this one will and has. I mean, obviously, it's kind of another victim of the, coronavirus, because it was supposed to come out in theaters and it kind of landed on really no marketing, just kind of got put out there. Like, I don't feel like most people even know this movie has come out. So I don't know. I feel bad being so critical of it, because I really kind of was rooting for, it, and, even Tom Hardy, who we are all fan of. Like, he's definitely kind of hit or miss, and he's very kind of controversial at times, and notorious for maybe being difficult or being very method and just like, but nothing. But I would say everything in this performance just turns me off. Like I don't even think the performance is interesting. I mean, maybe a couple parts, maybe, but it's just dialed too high for me, and especially for what this movie is trying to, or at least it seems has to have been trying to accomplish. It's just completely mismatched, or it's just completely out of sync with the tone of the movie.
Yeah, Al Capone's best moment in the movie is the opening dinner scene, where he's
absolutely
giving a toast to his family, and he's already insufferable in that scene. And I think we're meant to see that he is going on too long, and he's kind of losing the adults in the room. But he's giving a speech and a toast to his whole family, and the younger kids are a little bit more fascinated with him.
It all started when Nana and your great-grandpa Gabriel, they first came to America. And they roamed the land for many, many, many years, searching for a new home. Back then, Nana used to ride on top of my father's back.
Cazzo,
No, that's how you used to get around back then. They did.
Sometimes I see actors in scenes looking at another actor, and I think that they are using their real feelings about what they're doing and the situation that they're in their character. And I think Linda Cardellini in that scene is thinking, what the fuck is Tom Hardy doing? Because he's doing this cartoonish, like, he's doing this voice that's such a character voice. And again, we're supposed to see that he's losing his grip and that he looks bad and that everyone's kind of indulging him, but he still sort of has the ability to hold court in front of the family. That's kind of the point. And I mean, this movie is not accidentally showing him as pathetic and gross and without redeeming qualities. It's just, you begin to question, why are we watching a movie about this then? Like, what is the story if we're not allowed to really get to know any of the more sympathetic people like Linda Cardellini? It could have been more in her head. Maybe we would have felt something for her plight, but we don't know anything about why she's married to this guy, how long. The family relationships, you can glean them, but they're not stated so clearly that it jumps out at you. There's almost just nothing about it that works. And I think you said something about his performance turning you off. I think the whole movie kind of has that effect on me of just scene to scene. I just was sort of going, okay, whatever. And I was fully expecting that I would at least be entertained. I thought this might be a little trashy, but I thought it was going to be a fun, interesting movie because it's Tom Hardy and it's Josh Trank and it's Al Capone. I just was like, yeah, of course. When you suggested watching it for the show, I had no idea it was going to be the first movie in a long time that I was like coming into this recording going, God, I hope Steve and Ronald didn't like this because it'll be really tough for me.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine someone supporting this movie, like you said, Ronald. I can imagine someone saying, oh, you don't understand. But I think that it's just not there. And it's not out of hating anybody involved or not seeing that some effort was made to do something very specific. And again, I give him the golf clap for doing this kind of biopic, for basically not romanticizing the guy. That's a cool idea, but that's pretty much the only idea they had. I mean, that idea works, but that's it. I don't know that sustains you for 103 minutes, which, let's admit, that's short for this type of movie, but it feels long as hell.
It feels like a mini series. It's exhausting. It's an exhausting movie, and I wanted to like it too. Man, sometimes I feel like Tom Hardy, he feel like, I know this is like it feels like Nick Cage level dissension into crazy sometimes when I'm watching him on screen. And I think that the commonality between those two people is when they have good directors around them, someone can reel it in. But I think what's even more interesting is I think that I'm getting this impression that Tom Hardy's like an alpha male on the set, man. So like it might be hard to strip the ego from that, and you might have to get somebody like Tarantino. You might have to get somebody who's like, I will die before I put out a shitty movie with you in it. That sort of director that can kind of reel in what he does, man. Because sometimes he has unsalvageable scenes, man. Like it. And this is not the first thing that I felt like that in. I love Revenant. There were some scenes in Revenant when I was like, why would he put basically like candy in his mouth and start talking? I'm good with like a weird accent, committing to it. There were some scenes where I'm like, what is this? What is this talking? What is this doing? This is not audible. This is not audible a language. This is not English. This is a native language that was on this land. What is this that he's speaking? It drives me crazy, man.
The comparison to Nicolas Cage really strikes a chord with me because they're both capable of brilliance, and they're also both capable of just sort of like doing something that's fun for them as an actor, but that may not work with the reality of a movie. And some people seem to eat that shit up, but I find it sometimes can be very jarring.
It is jarring,
and the actor is sort of, you almost sense that with Josh Trank, that he kind of probably couldn't have controlled Tom Hardy if he had tried.
Absolutely not. I just think there are a couple of actors that are like that. Wahlberg, him. I mean, like alpha males on the set that you can't really, unless you want to fight them.
I don't know how you guys feel about Nicolas Cage. I love the guy, and I do love when he goes crazy in movies, but I also can see the ways that it's not when you look at his very, very best work, it's not that, it's not the stuff where he's just sort of like playing to the midnight movie crowd.
Yeah.
Right. When you mention like the whole alpha male, like getting with a director that's going to be a little more I guess in control. And I think back to like a lot of the roles that he's had that you can really kind of look at and isolate, like some of the more dialed in performances where, I feel like it's more in line with the tone of the film. It doesn't seem like it's a character inside of a movie. You know what I mean? Like this does, and like a lot of other stuff he's done. But like, you look at the movies that he's done, with what is his name? With Nicholas, when he did what was that first one? Bronson. When he made that with Wendig Refn, or like when he made like Lawless with John Hillcoat, or even any of the Christopher Nolan movies, Inception, Dark Knight Rises, Dunkirk. Like these are like, or Steve, he was in that. What was that one called? Like Locke and the Drop. Like these more like character movies, like Stephen Knight's film. It just seems like there's when he's in the hands of like writer directors that are more like, I don't know, they genuinely have like a vision, in their films, or they have a voice, or they have like a style, or they are in control of a set or of the story, even beyond personalities or egos. You look at his filmography, and like, at least me, I look at some of his movies and I'm thinking of like what some of my favorite movies that he's been in, or performances that he's been in, and they are movies that are more in line with that. They're movies, like even in Rock and Rolla, Guy Ritchie. You have these like writer director, more auteur directors that are really driving the movie to fruition, to what they want, and probably don't clash with what he is now, or like maybe what he was at some point while he made those movies.
Guy Ritchie would kick him in the balls though.
Right.
Guy Ritchie
exactly.
is also like that presence. Like he's like, you fuck this up, I will punch you outside. We could pause this and I will fight you, and then we can come back to set. He has that feel to his personality. So like, yeah, I get what you're saying, man.
Yeah, or even George Miller, like talking about Mad Max, like, even though that was a contentious set, like that's not like a weird Tom Hardy performance or whatever you want to. No. At least I don't believe it to be. And what we could kind of put in these movies that are more like Hollywood movies that he's been in, where like he's the star, and like Venom, or whatever's happening in some of those movies. It's two different sides of a talent that I really do like Tom Hardy.
Me too.
But it's kind of like hit or miss sometimes for me. Like, and this is definitely a miss for me, for sure.
This alpha male idea though about actors actually made me think of something that I realized just in the last couple of days, from a couple things I watched that I enjoyed. And I wanted to ask you guys, do you want to close off this episode with anything you've seen recently that you did like?
Yeah.
Because I would like to mention the incredible Kimmy Schmidt interactive movie on Netflix, and the film Come to Daddy with Elijah Wood. And I was watching both those movies, and I was enjoying not quite beta energy or whatever you want to say, but the fact that Elijah Wood and Daniel Radcliffe, who is in the Kimmy Schmidt movie, they don't have that alpha energy at all. They go in the opposite direction. These are two guys who had successful franchises early in their lives and don't have to work, and can be cool, and can pick projects they want to be in, and they play the weirdest roles, and they don't play up anything other than their kind of weird, big-eyed little boy qualities. But they certainly don't seem like alpha actors who would take over a set at all. And I find myself really admiring that aspect. I was watching Come to Daddy thinking, I love that Elijah Wood just is up for whatever weird project. It seems like he really knows he can just do whatever. And I've seen that same kind of energy from Daniel Radcliffe. Not just, what's the farting corpse movie? What was that called?
Swiss Army Man.
Swiss Army Man, not just that, but I mean other choices he's made where he's not always playing like, you know, they don't want to play a type. They seem totally content to just kind of do whatever thing. I don't know if you guys have seen either one of those things, but
No. I want to see the Kimmy Schmidt movie, man. I'm pretty excited about that.
I mean, it's funny. We didn't go through all the different options. I was looking for some way to double back and see some of the things we didn't pick. Because what happens is if you pick the wrong option, the quote unquote wrong option, you see the wrong option, and then it pushes you back to make the right option. It kind of compels you to make the right option. But if you make the right option, it just keeps going. And so if you keep going through the story, you realize you're kind of making the quote unquote smart story choices. And so you almost end up playing a little game with the interactive thing of going, well, I don't want to choose every time the one that seems like the most likely option for story, because that might be the one that just moves through story. But if you choose a blatantly wrong option, it'll give you a funny scene, and then they kind of reset you so that you will make the right choice.
That's really cool.
So I still feel like there are 2 or 3 moments I'm like, I made a note, I need to go back to this choice or that choice to see different things that happen. But no, if you like that show, you'll love, you know, Titus has one moment in particular. If you choose the right option, you'll get to see a great scene of him in a bar. But everybody's in pretty fine form. It just feels like a long episode of that show. It doesn't feel like a movie. And then Come to Daddy is very weird, and it doesn't really end well. It kind of peters out, but it's got some good turns in it. And as far as being that kind of, we've been talking a lot recently, how much do these kind of arty, creepy, ostensibly horror films, how much do they deliver? Come to Daddy has some shocking violence in it, some just like gut-wrenching, nauseating violence in it.
Wow.
But it also has some kind of neat story ideas in the setup. The first 20, 30 minutes gets you into an interesting place, and then there's a few surprises, and yeah, it's insanely gory. But I would say the last 10 minutes aren't the best minutes in the movie, and I think with a horror film, you kind of want the last 10 minutes to be the best part.
I'm going to check it out, definitely.
So have you guys seen anything that you would rank higher than Capone?
I've been TV showing it up. I haven't really seen many movies. You guys watching? What movies have you seen, Steve? Have you seen any?
I haven't really watched many movies this week. We binged the second season of Dead to Me on Netflix.
How was it? I like the first a lot.
Yeah, well, this is something that Linda Cardellini actually has a great character to perform. With to work with, she and Christina Applegate are just excellent in this show. If you haven't watched it, I'd highly recommend it. It's on its second season, just came out last Friday. We just finished it earlier this week, but it's just like a really just engaging, fun show. Just like bunch of twists and turns, and just James Marsden's great in it, and it's just a really solid show. I mean, it's like a dramedy, I guess. It's pretty funny though. So we watched that, and then I did watch a movie called Vivarium.
Oh, about the house.
Yeah, really weird movie. I don't know that I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than Capone because I kind of understood it. Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots are in it, and they basically, kind of wander into this situation where they're looking at a model house and kind of sort of get stuck in this maze of Pleasantville type of a town. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of loses its way through the movie for me. I mean, I kind of came out of it like with this idea, and I was going to mention this to you guys, like maybe as a topic we can go into deeper on another episode, but like I've been watching like some random movies that just literally feel like episodes. They could be like episodes of The Twilight Zone. And I basically have come to a realization that, like, I love that. Like, I love movies that I would say, oh, this could be an episode of The Twilight Zone, because I absolutely adore The Twilight Zone. It's like one of my favorite shows ever. And this falls into that category.
Remember that movie, The One I Love, with Mark Duplass and Elizabeth Moss?
Yeah.
Like, that was one that felt like that to
Totally.
me. I think we may have said that at the time, that it had this great, like, here's a concept that then spins out into a a movie. But like those if they do those right, the concept always stays in that zone of. It's like the scope never gets too big to take you away from the kind of human element.
Right.
Like a really good Twilight Zone, you will put yourself in the shoes of this person,
Right.
and you will feel how fucked they are, and you will be sad for them because they feel
Right.
like you in some way.
Yeah, and it's like it's a fun idea just because like I also watched this movie that I think came out last year on Netflix called Fractured with Sam Worthington, which was also not great, but again falls into that. This is like a contained human story that has something odd going on, whether it's from another, dimension or whatever. But there's something odd, there's something off in this story or in this movie, and I love that. I love that the movie that is, there's characters that you're interested in, but something just feels off. And you're basically spending it figuring out what that is or exploring what it is that they're inside of or dealing with. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just like watched that movie Vivarium and kind of felt that way the whole movie. And it does kind of. I know some people that were pretty into it, and I didn't really dislike it. I did think it was okay, but I think it kind of like just kind of spins its wheels a bit too much for me in exploring this kind of weird idea. And I don't want to really spoil it. If anybody out there is interested in a movie like that or that plot synopsis is interesting, I'd recommend checking it out. You may be into it, but just that idea of like, it just reminded me of how much, and I think also like seeing the new trailer for the season 2 of the Twilight Zone that Jordan Peele produces, kind of has me excited to see that second season. I wasn't the biggest fan of the first season. It's kind of all over the place for me, but they've got a lot of interesting people involved, filmmakers with the second season that I really like, and I'm curious to see what those episodes are. But just that idea of like, something just feeling off in a story really makes it unsettling and makes it uncomfortable. And I kind of love that. I love finding a movie that just like has that kind of just like seeping through the story, and you just kind of like are waiting for that, the piece of information that puts it all together, or understanding what's really happening. I just love that experience. I don't know, just random thought, but I thought about that a lot watching that movie.
The genre of weird fiction as opposed to straight horror fiction, people who usually define it as weird fiction has that element of the unexplained,
Yep.
just wrongness, just something like, because you felt that in your own life, that feeling of like something's not right here.
True.
It's great when something can evoke that's different from just making you jump.
I did see the Beastie Boys movie on Apple TV Plus, the Beastie Boys story. It was really good. A lot of unseen footage of the start of the band and how they were originally a rock band, and there was a woman involved originally at the first version of Beastie Boys. It's a cool story, man. It's super sad. Just one of the members died, and but it's worth it. It's a cool emotional roller coaster that feels like it's kind of shot on a stage with a big crowd, and feels like you're kind of a part of it. It's really well done.
Well, I've heard it criticized as being a TED Talk.
It was
and not a documentary. And there was a book that was published that was sort of an oral history that they put together, that the movie supposedly follows pretty much beat for beat as far as the, no pun intended, God, I trust me, that was not intended. Didn't Spike Jonze direct it? Like, I wonder if he could have made a really cool, filmically interesting documentary about them. But I guess for whatever reason, they decided they wanted this to be more, more human and less manipulated in some way.
Now you talk about Spike Jonze, man. He did a Aziz Ansari special where Aziz was in plain clothes and the camera was too close to his face. I don't know, man. He's on the outside of normal. So I thought it was pretty cool. I hadn't read the book. I heard something about the source material, but I didn't think it was supposed to be a doc. I just thought it was. Tyson did something pretty similar on Broadway that was kind of him just talking shit on the stage, and I like the idea of an artist just kind of being honest and raw on stage. I thought it was cool,
and I thought it was great. I'm a fan, and and I thought the presentation, the approach, the idea of what it is, and not being a documentary, but kind of, it's more of like a stage show, and that they kind of shot over, I think, 3 nights. But I thought it was great. I definitely recommend it, especially for any fans of the Beastie Boys. It's really, really good.
Well, I'll definitely watch it.
Yeah.
What about TV shows? Have you guys been watching TV? Any TV shows?
I rewatched Dave with my wife, and it was great. The second time through, I mean, the first time through, I told you I couldn't remember how I reacted at the end because I just know I was very emotional. But the second time through, I clapped at the end.
Yeah.
What have I been watching? So I started on Betty. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's kind of similar to Kids. It's an HBO show that just started about a bunch of women skaters that are in New York, kind of establishing who they are as people. It's really good, especially if you like kind of the tone of Kids. It's way less AIDS in it, I promise you. Vita, the show on Stars, it's in its last season about the 2 Hispanic American, Latinx women that are trying to run their mom's business who passed away pretty recently. It's a really good show. I'm on it. I'm on the last season. I love it. Last Dance. Come on. We talked about this. Bravest Warriors, which is from the same studio that does Adventure Time. The episodes are a lot shorter, but very entertaining. And I have to talk to you about a show that you brought up last week, Steve. If you were near me, I would squeeze your fucking wrist because you talked it up and you were so on point with the way you described it. Gangs of London. Okay, so I just watched a pilot in halfway of the first episode because a pilot is a movie's length. It's an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
I cannot believe what I'm watching on the fucking screen. I cannot believe that they managed to balance everything that was great about Gareth Evans' earlier work with The Raid and combine it with crime bosses in London. And it all seems very reasonable. It doesn't seem like outside of the realm of realism. And the kind of Trojan horse of finding out who is one of the main characters of the show. Because you go through an hour of this show, you're like, okay. And this guy kind of pops up. You're like, who the fuck is this guy? And then it's just really well done, man. Thank you for telling me about it,
man.
Steve. I didn't know that Gareth
I
didn't know that Gareth had anything to do with it. And I'm a huge fan of his stuff, but Jesus Christ, this show is probably one of his best works because it's the combination of the story that he can tell with the action. I love it, man.
And it's just really impressive that it's like, that it's like a TV series, like it's like the scale of it and the production of it. I mean, it is at a level that, this you would expect here in the States to see this on, like, I mean, I guess, on HBO or like, something with a real budget. I mean, like it is really, well made, and like the production value is very high, like for an action crime drama. It's really impressive. I'm glad you liked it.
Oh man, I need to finish it, but yeah, I'm 2 episodes in and I'm hooked.
Cool, that's great. I think I mentioned it before, but I'm really liking Defending Jacob on Apple Plus.
Yeah.
Apple TV
I'm watching that too. What? Wow.
Yeah.
What a fuck.
Yeah.
I didn't see the latest episode. I think I'm 3 in. I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention that show.
Yeah.
Oh my God, man. It caught me off guard. I was not expecting to be so dialed into the drama, man. We're watching Chris Evans act. It's Chris Evans, right? Is this Chris Evans?
Yeah.
Acting his ass off,
Yeah.
man. Acting his ass off in the show.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, it's a really interesting story, and I like not knowing anything about it and like not knowing where it's going to go. And it does an interesting thing where it's kind of, the episodes have like a scene or two with a present day interrogation that's kind of driving the story of each episode, like piecing together, information from this story that, ultimately I'm assuming we'll figure out what happened in this true crime drama. But it's an interesting show, and I think it's like a big hit. I was reading it's like besides the morning show, I think it's like the most watched series on Apple TV Plus. Like, or it's like their biggest show, right up there with the morning show. So it's kind of cool especially for Chris Evans. He's kind of doing well, coming off of Avengers Endgame. He's got Knives Out, one of the biggest movies of last year, and he's got a hit show on Apple TV Plus. So I'm happy to see him doing well in life. You know what I mean? I'm rooting for Chris Evans.
Yeah, man.
Well, I mean, he had Knives Out so soon after Endgame. Endgame is like his mythic, leading man, superheroic moment. And then Knives Out is a great movie that, to however you look at his character, in that it kind of deflates that idea of this Dudley Do-Right-esque perfect guy that Captain America was. So he's already kind of in that post. He's not quite what I was saying about Elijah Wood or Daniel Radcliffe, because he's not a little boy man, but he is he is like at a point where he can do whatever kind of project he wants to. And he already sort of has been that guy. I mean, doing Snowpiercer might seem like kind of an action hero move, but when you see that movie, you see that what he's doing is actually something a little bit more iconoclastic if you're looking at him as that guy. So I don't know. He seems like a guy who's going to continue to make cool choices. So I will definitely catch up on Defending Jacob, because I tend to forget these streaming services. Stuff slips past me all the time, where I hear it's coming and then I kind of forget that it's on its way. And then when it hits, is that show all bingeable at this point, or is it in the middle of a season? What's up with Defending Jacob? How many episodes could I watch?
They're doing a. I think they released when it launched. I want to say there was 2 episodes, and then it's a weekly release every Friday. So when this podcast comes out, the 5th episode will premiere the day that we release this podcast.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll catch up on that.
Yeah, I would check that out for sure. Yeah, I think that's it, man. Anything else you guys want to mention real quick?
I think that's it for me.
I want to say I found the quarantine anthem for America. If folks want to go to YouTube, I think if you search for Landis Expandis, but the song is Back the Hale Up. Back the HALE up. It's this guy Landis Expandis. He's from a local. He's not. I think he originally is from Connecticut, but he's been a Baltimore guy for a long time, and he's been in the band the Almighty Senators in Baltimore. And through the quarantine, he has been posting songs constantly, little 1.5, 2 minute songs on his YouTube channel. And he posted one song called "Back the Hale Up." That is, it's the bop. It's the bop of the quarantimes. And I think it could become the summer single that everyone needs. It's a 2 minute song, so maybe people need to do the extended remix. Maybe Landis himself should work that out. But part of what makes it so infectious is that it's a little 2 minute kind of tossed off thing.
I gotta leave my place. There's a man right behind me and he's touching on his face. I got my mask and my gloves on just in case. Tried to move, but he's taking up my place. But you got to back up, please back the hell up. Na 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 na, you're standing too close, please back the hell up. Na 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 na.
Anyway, it's very funny and catchy as hell, and it's got that quality that certain funny songs can have, where you go, okay, that's just basically a good song. That's on top of being funny, it's now in my ear forever. So, back the hell up.
Cool. All right, check it out.
All right. So yeah, I think just to circle back real quick for a quick cap on Capone, I think we can all agree, and that's a what is that? That's a wait for it, or
that's a hold up. That's
hold up. Yeah, got to make sure I have this scale right. Yeah, that's a hold up. Find something else to watch.
Nothing for you to see here.
And any of the other stuff we talked about is, I'm surely, more interesting than that movie, unfortunately. So yeah, and then also today coming out on video on demand platforms is Warner Brothers Animation's Scoob, another movie that, again, was supposed to have a theatrical release, but today, if you're listening to this podcast on Friday the 15th, it's available in your house. So, we'll probably check that out and talk about it next week, I'm sure, at least a little bit. And yeah, so you can find us at movieshmovie.com, facebook.com/movieschmovie. And if you watched Capone, let us know what you thought about it. Let us know if you've been watching any other shows, TV shows, movies that we have missed. We've been trying to cover as much as we can and make some recommendations of some that maybe some of our listeners may not have heard of yet. But if you know of some, definitely let us know. And yeah, it's going to be it. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Hail up. Na 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 na. Standing too close. Please back the hell up. Na 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 la la. Okay.
I'm Fonzo.
Perfect.